Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Colors Fade. This is a video I never wanted to make. I'm here to tell you that I'm walking away from Galactic Civilizations 4 Supernova, and I won't be showing it on my channel anymore. This is really sad because I enjoyed playing the early access quite a bit. I thought it showed a lot of promise, but this is something I have to do. Before I bid goodbye to it though, I wanted to explain why, because the reason I won't be playing this game is part of a much bigger discussion. And that discussion is about AI. I know some viewers are going to be very disappointed by this decision. It's been a long time since Galactic Civilizations has been on my channel, and it was, after all, the first game I ever featured. But the bottom line is, I have to listen to my conscience. You might be wondering, what the heck does AI have to do with Galactic Civilizations 4? And why does it even matter? Why does it matter enough for me to stop playing the game? Let me explain. For a long time, I've avoided making this video in part because a friend asked me to be on his podcast to talk about this very subject, to talk about AI. And I very much would like to do that podcast in the near future if the planets align. But for right now, I feel it's necessary to spend some time talking about this because the topic is too relevant, too important, and Stardock has, in a way, forced my hand. For starters, I want to preface this entire video by saying that what the media is calling AI right now is not really AI. These programs are much more akin to very complicated algorithms. They are not exhibiting any sort of intelligence at all. They are trained on a mountain of input and then produce output on command. They do not make art on their own, of their own volition. They do not spend their free time contemplating the mysteries of the universe or wondering how they might solve climate change, cure cancer, or send humans to other habitable planets. All they do is take input and produce output. However, since the media and everyone else has taken to calling these algorithms AI, then I guess I have to as well. The horse is out of the barn, so to speak. Semantics aside, the real issue here is about the harm that AI is currently causing and the greater harm that it will cause in the future. Before I go down this road and before anyone has a chance to label me as some kind of AI abolitionist or try to frame this debate in black and white terms, let me say this. There are good uses for AI. We've seen some of them already. DeepMind, for instance, which was sold to Google, has been used to solve a nearly impossible problem in biology: modeling protein structures. Something that would have taken human beings millions of years to solve on their own, it did in a couple of years. And Iron Man himself, Robert Downey Jr., has teamed with a company called Aura with the hope of using AI to clamp down on online crime, which last year alone cost Americans just over $10 billion. Clearly, there are good uses for AI. The problem is, right now, there are many more bad uses for it, and the AI exists in a literal Wild West. There are no rules or regulations. There are no constraints. There are no safeguards to stop the worst actors from doing the worst things possible. The tech bros of the world know this, and they are taking full advantage. We are living in a period of time when untold harm can and will be done to the people of this planet, all because there's nothing to stop it from happening. Yet. If you're wondering what I mean by harm, then look no further than a recent story about a family terrorized by a kidnapper who used voice cloning AI to make the mother believe that they had kidnapped her daughter. Fortunately, in this one instance, no one was hurt and no money changed hands. But it should be easy to see how much more potent imposter scams will be with the advent of technologies like voice cloning AI. The harm doesn't stop at kidnapping. Science fiction author Patrick Tomlinson, a victim of harassment himself, having been swatted over 40 times now, noted in a Twitter thread that there are a number of ways to utilize this technology to do harm to others. What happens when you call your spouse to confess an affair that never happened? What happens when it's your voice calling in a fake bomb or mass shooting? What happens when your boss gets a call and you go on a racist, sexist, or anti-Semitic slur-filled diatribe before announcing you're quitting? And maybe one of the worst scenarios, what happens when you call your child's school to say your kid is getting picked up early by their uncle for a doctor's appointment? It's all possible with voice cloning AI. That, however, is not even the tip of the iceberg. Ryan Reynolds was the recent victim of a deepfake when Tesla used AI to generate a version of him without his consent. Now, Ryan Reynolds is a famous movie actor with a lot of financial resources, and he could probably sue Tesla for a truckload of money if he wanted. But what about regular people, like you and me, who lack the financial resources to find justice through the legal system? What happens when someone deepfakes us? What happens when someone deepfakes us into an affair we never had, releasing a sex tape that never occurred, or deepfakes us planting a bomb somewhere we never actually went to? We already know the police, especially in America, are willing to compromise evidence for a conviction. So what happens to us when it's not the cops who are planting evidence, but an AI? And not just any evidence, but convincing evidence. These are just some of the ways in which AI is already being used to harm people. There will be more. We're barely scratching the surface here. Already, users on Twitter are showing us the many ways in which these AI art programs can be used to falsely reveal public figures in compromising positions. We know that a lie travels faster and farther than the truth. We're already living in the age of mass disinformation. This is only going to make it worse. As Robert Downey Jr. mentioned, Americans lost over $10 billion last year in online fraud. What happens when fraudsters and hackers start using AI to make it even easier to steal from regular people like you and me? Those folks are going to lose their entire savings, their jobs, their houses. Relationships will be destroyed, and yes, people will die. This is not an exaggeration. So how do we deal with this? Well, there are ways, and I'd like to get into that conversation in particular, but it's a long conversation and this isn't the time or the place. Again, there's a podcast I've been invited to speak on, and I'd like to address the bigger picture there. Instead, what I'd like to do is take a small step backward and talk about AI specifically in video games. And I want to talk about Galactic Civilizations 4 Supernova and why I won't be putting it on my channel anymore. Supernova is utilizing a version of ChatGPT called Alien GPT. Stardock plans to use this AI to help generate new factions, as well as quests and dialogue. Also, they plan on using AI image generation to facilitate new faction art. Now, I shouldn't have to explain why this is bad, but apparently I do, because in a recent tweet, Stardock developer Brad Wardell himself said he didn't understand the problem. Let me start here. If you do not have any friends who are artists, then you should get some. And if you do have friends who are artists, and by artists I mean writers, graphic artists, musicians, or any other job that falls into the realm of art, then there's a good chance you've already heard from them about the harm that AI is doing and the fear that they feel from having to deal with it. The thing to remember is this isn't hypothetical. It's happening now. AI programs like ChatGPT and AI-driven image generation programs like Midjourney need to be trained on existing content in order for their predictive models to produce viable output. By and large, this is done without the permission of the artists. This is, in point of fact, theft, and there are already class action lawsuits against some of these AI image generators because of it. You see, there's two huge moral problems with AI right now. First, in order to train the AI, tech bros have to commit theft, which they don't seem to mind doing, because no artist wants their work used to train an AI, so none of them are giving permission. Second, and even more appalling, these AI programs are being touted by some as a replacement for real artists. Companies want to use these tools to eliminate writers and artists from their payroll. That should be abhorrent to anyone who hears that sentence. This, as it turns out, is one of the many factors that has led to the ongoing Writers Guild strike. The Writers Guild is seeking several concessions, one of which is to ensure that AI programs are not used in the writing of any portion of their jobs. Without top-down regulation on AI, it will be up to labor, the artists themselves, to negotiate the exclusion of AI in the workplace. And we already know from experience how well corporations love unions and how willing they are to work with them. This will be a struggle every step of the way. The sad part of all of this is that every single one of you watching and listening to this video loves art. You love TV shows and movies and music and video games and books and posters. But we are staring at a future where human beings behind these wondrous designs will no longer be able to make that art, because AI will have stolen all the content and then all the jobs. What are we left to do? On a large scale, we're going to have to grapple with the reality of widespread regulation, and we're going to have to limit how we research AI. There's simply no other way. The harm that unregulated AI can and will do is simply too great. Unfortunately, I don't know if I trust humanity to do the right thing considering our recent failures. After all, we've failed with climate change, and in America in particular, we've failed spectacularly with gun control and banking regulation. What makes anyone think that we can come together to regulate AI for only safe, good purposes? Personally, I don't have a lot of faith in that happening, which leaves me with myself and what I can personally do. I can only control what I can control. And to that end, I can do two things. First, I can make my voice heard, which is what this video is all about. I can point out the danger of AI and the harm it is doing, and I can hope others recognize that threat as well and act accordingly. But more directly, I can act with my dollar and my channel. I can choose not to support game developers who utilize AI programs like ChatGPT or AlienGPT or image generators. I can choose not to put their games on my channel and grant them unnecessary exposure. I can choose not to support game developers who do not want to hire real human artists, writers, animators, and musicians to create their content. Video games have always been built on the labor and love of artists. Every pixel is the end result of someone's art. Every note of a soundtrack is the result of a musician's labor. And it should stay that way. Our future should not be us laboring over boring jobs so AI can make art. It should be the other way around, and this should be obvious. AI should be laboring over menial jobs so that we can spend more of our time making art. The last thing I want to say before I wrap this up, I emphatically do not support Stardock's utilization of AI in their games. It doesn't matter how they intend to use it or that it's an optional feature. The AI itself is the fruit from a poisonous tree. In a message board post discussing their use of AI, Stardock said they have an extensive library of aliens to train AI image generators on, as if that somehow ignores the fact that these AI programs have already been developed and trained on the stolen work of real artists. What this post tells me is that they understand perfectly how this all works and the harm that it does. To make matters worse, they go on to say they are now planning on hiring even more writers and artists, not to create art for their game, but so they can feed that content into the AI to further train it. Imagine being one of those hired artists or writers. You're not being hired so your work can be put into a game, but so that you can train an algorithm instead? It's abhorrent. Which brings us to a recent NPR interview where journalist Ari Shapiro interviewed David Simon, the creator of one of the most well-written shows ever made, HBO's The Wire. In the interview, Shapiro tries to convince Simon that surely having an AI program around to help him do his job would be a good thing. But listen to Simon's response. Shapiro: okay, so you've spent your career creating television without AI, and I could imagine today you thinking, boy, I wish I had that tool to solve those thorny problems. Simon: what? Shapiro: or saying, you imagine what? Boy, if that had existed, it would have screwed me over. I don't think an AI can remotely challenge what writers do at a fundamentally creative level. Shapiro goes on to say, but if you were trying to transition from scene 5 to scene 6 and you're stuck with that transition, you can imagine plugging that portion of the script into the AI and say, give me 10 ideas for how to transition this. Simon: I'd rather put a gun in my mouth. There is a complete disconnect between the people who see this technology as a tool to quote unquote create content and the artists who actually are responsible for creating content. And since this disconnect is so huge, it's going to be incumbent upon every single one of us to let these people know that this is just plain wrong. Therefore, I cannot, in good conscience, support Galactic Civilizations 4 Supernova. I will not put it on my channel. I will not play it. And I will not give it another minute of exposure. And I hope others follow suit, because I don't think regulation is coming anytime soon, if at all. We do have a choice in all of this, every last one of us. We can choose to roll over and let AI destroy our lives and destroy our futures, or we can fight it. We can recognize the threat now and take steps to work against it. We can work for regulation, and we can work for limiting the research, and we can work to try to limit what AI is actually used for. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do my part to limit the effects of AI. My hope is that Stardock's developers, directors, managers, and producers will reconsider their stance, that they will take a good, long look at what they're doing and reverse course. Because I do think Supernova has a chance to be a compelling and fun Space 4X game. But until they do that, I am not going to be a party to it. I am not going to amplify the scourge that is AI. So there you have it, folks. That is why I will not be playing anymore Galactic Civilizations 4 Supernova. I'm your host, Colors Fade. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave your questions and comments down below. Consider supporting my Patreon, which is in the description below. Until next time, happy gaming. And I hope that all the games that you play have nothing to do with AI.